The evening of June 7th, 1944, comes down cool and gray over the fields outside Cannes. A day earlier, the invasion had broken open the coast of Normandy, and the men who survived that first day are still learning what kind of war this one is going to be. At the Abbaye d'Ardenne, a stone monastery with a squat tower that gives a clear view for miles, something ordinary is happening. Prisoners are being sorted. 11 Canadian soldiers, some from the North Nova Scotia Highlanders, some from the Sherbrooke Fusiliers, sit under guard in the Abbey's outbuildings. They have surrendered. Under every rule either side claims to follow, that should be the end of the danger for them. A soldier who lays down his weapon and raises his hands has left the war. That is the entire premise these men are operating on, whether they say it out loud or not. The evening is quiet. Somewhere close, an artillery duel rumbles and fades. Inside the Abbey walls, nothing yet suggests that quiet is about to end in the Abbey garden. Among the prisoners is Lieutenant Thomas Windsor, an officer with the Canadian forces pulled from the fighting near Abbaye. He is not part of the first group selected. 10 men are chosen at random from those being held. Then Windsor is brought out separately to join them, making 11. Rank means nothing in the selection. It is simply which men happen to be standing where the guards point. A soldier's name, in this format, is the only thing that survives the moment intact, and so it matters that we say them. Among the group are Corporal George Pollard and privates identified afterward only by surname: McNaughton, McKeel, Crow, Doucette, Doherty, Lockhead, Miller, Moss, alongside Corporal McIntyre. These are not anonymous casualties of an artillery barrage. They are men who are captured, searched, and held, which under the laws of war makes them someone else's responsibility to protect. That protection is the entire moral center of what happens next. The Abbey's tower is being used as a forward observation post by the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend, and its commanding presence in the area is a Waffen SS officer named Kurt Meyer, an SS Standartenführer leading the division's 25th Panzer Grenadier Regiment. Meyer has fought on the Eastern Front. His men have not. Most of the rank and file under him are younger than the war itself feels. Hitler Youth graduates, 17 and 18 years old, led by officers who have already seen what unrestrained war looks like and have stopped flinching from it. That night, the 11 men are walked, a few at a time, into the Abbey's garden. They are not told where they are going. They are shot in the back of the head. By morning, the garden holds 11 Canadian dead, men who had already stopped fighting when they died. The next day, near noon, the process repeats. 7 more prisoners, all North Nova Scotia Highlanders captured in the fighting around Abbaye and Buron, are brought into the Abbey, interrogated one at a time, then walked out to join the others. Witnesses among the guards later described the men shaking hands with each other before they were led away, each one understanding, in the last seconds available to him, what was about to happen and choosing to face it with whatever dignity the moment still allowed. It takes about 10 minutes to kill all 7. An SS private named Alfred Helzel, present with the unit, will later tell Canadian investigators that the men under Meyer's command had been given standing orders not to take prisoners, orders that leave no room for confusion about intent. These were not soldiers uncertain of the rules. They were professionals who understood exactly what a surrendered man was owed and chose otherwise. If a story like this deserves to exist at all, it's because these 18 men had names, units, and families waiting on letters that would eventually stop coming, and somebody eventually was going to have to answer for how they died. That's the job this channel has taken on. Not outrage, just the record told straight. The killings at the Abbey do not end there. On June 17th, 10 days after the first executions, 2 more Canadians, Lieutenant Fred Williams and Lance Corporal George Pollard, go missing while patrolling near Buron for disabled German tanks. Both are later confirmed killed at or near the Abbey, bringing the total number of Canadian prisoners murdered at this single location to 20. For weeks, none of this is known outside the unit responsible. The bodies remain buried in the Abbey grounds as the front moves past them, the Allies pushing toward Cannes, and then beyond it, the Abbey itself becoming just another capture position on a map covered in capture positions. By late July, as Canadian forces secure the ground around Cannes for good, Reports begin circulating among Allied intelligence officers about missing prisoners who were last seen being marched toward German lines rather than killed in combat. These reports are vague at first. A name here, a company here, no bodies to confirm anything. By August, exhumation teams begin locating remains in the Abbey garden, and the discoveries stop being vague. 20 sets of remains, all Canadian, all showing signs of execution rather than combat death. The reports move up the chain quickly after that, from field intelligence officers to divisional headquarters to the Canadian War Crimes investigative apparatus being assembled almost from scratch, because Canada has never prosecuted a case like this before. The man who receives the growing file is Lieutenant Colonel Bruce MacDonald, an investigator assigned to build the case. He reads through witness statements, exhumation reports, unit rosters cross-referenced against missing persons lists. He does not react with outrage on paper. His notes are procedural, dates, names, positions, contradictions to resolve. "We have 20 bodies and 1 division responsible," he tells a colleague, setting the file down and picking it back up almost immediately. "Now we build a case that survives a courtroom." It is a quiet line, delivered without theater, but it captures the entire shift underway. This is no longer a battlefield atrocity to be mourned and left behind. It is a criminal investigation, methodical and slow, aimed at a specific chain of command. Kurt Meyer himself is captured in September 1944, wounded, near Namur in Belgium, well before the investigation into the Abbaye killings has gathered enough to charge him with anything. He spends over a year in a British prisoner of war camp at Trent Park while MacDonald's team works the case from the other direction, locating survivors, tracking down men who served under Meyer's command, building toward the moment they can connect the orders at the top to the bodies in the garden. Alfred Helzel is found and questioned. He confirms the no-quarter order, then, under pressure once brought before the tribunal, tries to withdraw the claim, before ultimately being persuaded back to his original account. Local French civilians from Authy and Buron, who watch Canadian prisoners march toward German lines and never seen walking back, are located and prepared to testify. Every piece is checked against the exhumation records, against unit positions, against the timeline of who was where on June 7th and 8th. By December 1945, the file is complete enough to bring to trial. The court convenes at Aurich in occupied Germany on December 10th, 1945, Canada's first war crimes prosecution, conducted under a legal doctrine barely tested anywhere yet. That a commanding officer can be held responsible for what his troops do, even without personally pulling a trigger. Meyer faces 5 charges. That he incited his men to deny quarter to surrendering soldiers. That he bears responsibility for 23 prisoners killed near Buron and Authy. That he ordered the killing of 7 prisoners at his own headquarters. That he bears responsibility for that same killing as an alternative charge. And that he bears responsibility for the deaths of 11 more. For 2.5 weeks, the tribunal hears testimony, Helzel's account, the French witnesses, the exhumation records, the rosters placing Meyer's command at the Abbey while the killings occurred. Meyer maintains throughout that he never ordered the executions and was unaware they were happening. The court, presided over by Major General Harry Foster, does not accept that account. On December 28, 1945, Meyer is convicted on 3 of the 5 charges, inciting his troops to deny quarter and bearing responsibility for both groups of killings at the Abbey. Foster delivers the sentence without elaboration. Meyer is to suffer death by firing squad. Under Canadian military procedure, a death sentence handed down overseas requires confirmation from a reviewing officer before it can be carried out. That officer is Major General Christopher Vaux, commander of the Canadian Occupation Force in Germany. Vaux reads the trial record in full. He does not dispute that the killings happened, or that Meyer's command bears responsibility in the legal sense the tribunal found. But he concludes that Meyer's own hand was once removed from the triggers themselves, that command responsibility, however real, is not the same as personally ordering a man's death. One day before the scheduled execution, Vaux, along with Lieutenant General John Murchie and High Commissioner Vincent Massey, makes the decision to commute the sentence. Meyer will not be shot. He will serve life in prison instead. It is a decision that draws criticism from some who work the case, men who believed a commander training and leading troops who executed prisoners in his own headquarters garden bears more than indirect responsibility. But the decision stands. Meyer is transferred to Dorchester Penitentiary in New Brunswick, Canada, where he spends the next several years working in the prison library and learning English, a world away from the garden where 20 men once shook each other's hands before dying. Kurt Meyer is released in 1954 after serving under a decade of his sentence and returns to West Germany, where he becomes a spokesman for former Waffen SS veterans until his death in 1961. The 20 Canadian soldiers he was convicted of ordering or bearing responsibility for killing do not get a release date. What they get, instead, is a permanent record. Their names now line the garden wall at the Abbaye d'Ardenne itself. A small memorial, standing in the exact space where they died, maintained so the location of their deaths cannot quietly become just another patch of French countryside. Families who waited on letters that stopped arriving in June of 1944 eventually received the harder truth in their place. Not missing in action, but executed after surrender, a distinction that changes nothing about the grief and everything about the accounting owed. The trial at Auric did not deliver the ending everyone directly involved in building the case wanted, but it delivered a record, sworn testimony, exhumed remains, a legal doctrine tested and upheld that exists specifically so events like this one cannot be quietly rewritten or forgotten by the people responsible for them. That record is the reason this story can still be told accurately today, 80 years later, with names instead of numbers. These stories deserve exactly that kind of permanence, which is the entire reason for making them.